begin my presentation by thanking the consortium of art collectors for a special invitation extended to me. I particularly salute the chairman of the consortium and members of the council. I feel deeply humbled by this, more so because it provides me with a forum for interrogating the variables of this topic, namely exploration, informed approach, and art collection. The art historical method demands that these variables be placed and examined within the framework of art historical developments. Next. It's very much like trying to use a time machine to hurtle through the centuries in order to glimpse something of the nature of art, its patronage, and patronizing institutions, the artists, their creative vision, mastery and management of techniques and media, production strategies, and their impact in shifting of patterns of taste, the collection and storage of art objects. As we are often told, artworks are products of changing historical conditions, of which they are the visual documents. While they are shaped by these historical conditions, they in turn shape them. Next. Thus, in the constructive terms, to explore a new and informed approach to art collection presupposes the existence of older and informed approaches of art collection. In other words, to chart new and informed ways of art collection is to return to the art historical developments surrounding different approaches to art collection. It is therefore to history that we must return for a good discussion of how art collection was institutionalized in various historical contexts and social conditions. It is when we have interrogated the history, next, that we're able to now map out the strategies for the collection of artworks. We go on with the discursive plan, which is threefold. Number one, institutional collection of artworks were run briefly from 15th century to 19th century, and how hard it was, what really motivated people to collect works of art, the quality of the works of art produced. So we know exactly that how it can visually engage you as a collector. We are referring to that age that Egypt that took it to Greece. But Herodotus, who visited Egypt, said, in comparison to Greece, Greece was only bush, while Egypt was only a center of civilization. So you can see that kind of transference. So we find then that the age of popes, kings, and emperors provided a time when works of art were collected in institutional context. We need to be aware of that as collectors. Then there are shifts in modern strategies in collecting works of art. At that time, we are talking about the domination of capitalism and the exchange market, the modern age, and the middle class and elites. Then we come how within that period framework, you have the emergence of galleries and museums as patronizing institutions, the collection of artworks. Next. Genius. Say an on the basis of creative experimentation and innovation, as well as the ability to dare and challenge the frontier of creative existence as a counter-argument, a counter-sign, and a counter-narrative. Next. Some works of art seem strange, if not shocking. When you see some works, they shock you with their visual presence. Yeah, the strange soon becomes familiar, as is true of all innovations, which are received with reservation, if not contempt, until they are admitted into the art world by theorizing them. Theory is a means of accounting the principles that govern the production and consumption of artworks. To collect works of art, the collector should also act as a patron who, through art endowments, will facilitate creative and performance practices to a high level of professionalism. To collect is to enter into the domain of art patronage. The more extensive the artist's profile online, the more we're able to understand the performance strategies of the artist. I want to insist that we are setting requirements, minimum requirements, for the collection of artworks. I call it paradigmatic frame for understanding works of art. Art is a system of education. Art collection is a system of education. And if you lack that education, you are collecting in vain. We must know who is the artist. Artists define their historical periods. The artist who painted in the 15th century, different the artist who painted in the 18th century. The artist who painted in the 19th century, different the artist who painted in the 20th century. So we must know the artist in terms of the historical periods of art performance and the strategies therein that we are putting into that performance. So we must know and define the artist. Because artist, by painting or sculpting, is professing through his works his own creative identity, which is very, very, very important. We also have to need research on biographical research of an artist. So to collect, you must look in and tune in and find out who the artist is. and find a background profile to the artist. It's not enough. You must understand the kind of media used by the artist. An artist want to use color, but now people are using discarded objects. So you must know the time frame of the media being used by the artist so you can collect the works. There are techniques. Without techniques, you can't handle media. The artist is in vain if he doesn't know the media and how to apply techniques to modern media so that both come into being. Forms, of course, forms vary from historical period to another. The 18th century, the form in 18th century is different from form in 19th century and even 20th century. So when I talk about different historical periods for forms. So if you don't understand it to collect, you might collect something else, you don't know the history of the form you are collecting. So artworks have history. Abide by that history legitimately, otherwise we are collecting in vain. With our functions, art forms have also functions. We have to address the functions. If you have a tapestry done in the 15th century, will be kept in the Sistine Chapel. It becomes a well of reaffirming faith. When done in a modern hall in 20th century, it's a tapestry, aesthetic object only, for you to see and admire and to raise your aesthetic emotions. So meanings are important to art objects. Meanings in 15th century are different from meanings in 20th century. So when you are collecting a work of art, you must kind of meanings with the historical period of the art being presented to you. Aesthetics. Robert Thompson talks about aesthetics as a differential weighting of beauty, a critical evaluation, what makes a board valid as an object to collect. You must understand the varying patterns of taste through the centuries, otherwise we are collecting in vain. Next. I want to give you an example. For example, what you are looking for when you talk about who is an artist. We must be able to recognize the artist's date if we are collecting the work. If he's dead, the death date is very important, if applicable. Where the artist lives and works, if he's still alive, very important. Where, when, and which the artist studied, very, very important. Organization the artist belongs to. This is a validation of professionalism. Galleries, museums, or institutions where the artist had exhibited either in one-person shows or a group show with other artists. Very, very, very important. Then we talk about professionalism and status, validation of professionalism. We talk about the artist awards, prizes, grants and honors that the artists have received, including art fellowships and residencies. Next. But in a realistic manner, we call it classicism, or what we call naturalism. So we're entering the age of naturalism when we're talking about classical works of art. It's in the age of popes, kings, emperors, warriors, and empire builders, wealthy families, such as Medici, 15th century. Artists, we are talking about patrons of the arts. Through massive construction of churches and public monuments, arts are embedded into the structure of architecture. Professional artists are producers of works of art, institutional collection of works of art, and their display in various institutional contexts. Next. So we find, for example, this is the interior of St. Peter Basilica in Rome, built in 15th century by Pope Julius II. We refer to him as an empire builder. He fought serious wars and conquered many territories and amassed a lot of wealth. He then set to construct an edifice that became unique of its type throughout the whole universe. It still is today the largest structure in the world. If I attempt by every coast to imitate that, the Pope ruled that it can never be greater than St. Peter. So they became more humble. So the expansive interior of the Sistine Chapel in Rome provides a context for institutional collection of art objects under the patronage of the papacy. We can see the interior, almost an artistic environment. Images flowing right from ceiling to the walls, almost like a universe, of images. The central wall in its massive dimension provides a setting for the metaphysical recreation of last judgment. The papacy. It is mandatory. So he gave me what the requirements he wanted. I said, set sail. And he was back for 6 years, painting last judgment on our frescoes, raising them to epic levels of visual representation. The figures almost life-size and require the ingenious handling of human anatomy and colors to incarnate a vision of heaven. A collector ought to appreciate the epic stature of this art performance. Michelangelo, painter, sculptor, and architect. Next. And I will see an image to tell you what happens here. As a legionary, this painting invokes that moment when God is company of heavenly cherubs, angels, incarnated to be the creation of Adam. Note the monumental style in handling of form. You can see that anatomy is very well studied. The human proportions are in order. The figures are almost life-size. with a space around, color rhythms well in place, so that you find that kind of epic performance is typical of age of classicism referred to 15th century humanism. Next. And now we find also the same thing happening. Here's a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, the best portrait in the world. None has beaten it so far. That's why it is locked in Museum of Man in Paris behind bulletproof frame. This is the most expensive and perhaps the most unique portrait ever painted in the history of art by Leonardo da Vinci, poet, painter, architect, biologist, military engineer, and the first man to design a flying man, a precursor of the modern airplane. It is housed in the collection of the Museum of Man in Paris and secured behind a bomb-proof glass cup. Beside you find again that you look at what is happening there. We talk about the drama of light and shadows to bring out an image in a convincing manner. We're talking about, if you like, what we call about pictorial convincingness. The reality we see with our eyes, the reality of a picture, is an illusion, but it's an illusion that it convinces. So the reality comes into place. We can't just a painting by when we do that tutu. This painting was lost so many years ago and recovered again. So you find this beauty is a history behind it. So when you are collecting, you know the history of the work you are collecting. In fact, this one was sold in maybe Sobi or yes, one of these auction sales or Christie, and then it was sold for over £1 million. So in other words, in this company, and one is also a master that mastered the Renaissance. Next, crisis or reformation or crisis everywhere. Paintings also reflected that crisis and its condition. This painting was executed under monarchical patronage and illustrates how artworks entered into institutional collections of monarchs, princes, emperors, and people of wealth and status. It marks that august moment, the burial of Count August, a public ceremony with elaborate pomp, if not pageantry. It depicts the social tension that exists in society, and the burial is even more overcome by activities. You can see there, the heaven is so busy, and even as if overcoming the earth. And so that's what we are. We also move on to another 17th century painting. In the age of counter-reformation, by 17th century, the Catholic Church decided that having been hurt by reformation, they had to reform and re-establish faith and doctrine by using artists as a means of political propaganda so that they can produce hyper-realistic figures that convince the laity. A sculpture by Bernini, who is a sculptor and a goldsmith. The sculpture by Gianlorenzo Bernini, 17th century, in Baroque period, is a religious sculpture showing the masterful handling of form, both as figures with cascading debris. This is marble. So imagine how marble is being reduced to the kind of cascading forms, flowing so that they are having a form that is realistic and very convincing. It depicts when Saint Teresa was anticipating that moment when the angel would strike her with an arrow to experience divine ecstasy. Next. Now I find another painting, 18th century, Romanticism. People don't understand that nature can also invade us with its wonder, secrets of its wonder. It's very, very important. So if I remember, is a concern with the creation of artworks that reveals something of nature's immense grandeur, expansiveness, and awesomeness, and of the sublime and beautiful. So you look at the work, you find that it's a struggle between seamen caught up in a major serious shipwreck as a struggle to deal with the unconquerable forces of nature. You can find again in nature of classicism, the silhouettes are well in place, proportion, even though you have many figures, they are well delineated and arranged convincingly in a rational order. And even confusion is also provides unity of the painting. Next. We will now enter into the end of modernism. This is the age of modernism. So that if you are collecting works of art, you know whether you are collecting classical works of 15th century up to 19th century, or we enter the modern age, the collector must be aware of the sense of history in collecting works of art. The advent of 20th century modernism was prefigured by the new process of industrialization and its manufacturing technologies, creative freedom and democracy, rise of secularization and individualism, and the mass production of art materials, including material goods, including the decline of institutional. So at this point in time, the artist emerges in the environment as an individual. He's no longer under the constraints and restrictions of patronal institutions. The Pope is no longer there, the Emperor is no longer there. He has become himself. 20th century is a liberation. It's a time of what we call intellectual and creative democracy. Artists are on their own. Modernism extols such values that define its conditions, such as Totality theories. And the totality theory is that we say reason is the order of the universe. For example, in physics, they say reason, mathematics is the first principle of physics. In the same way, in the 20th century, reason is a rational way of understanding the world. It's a total theory. It tells assume that the world is same. One theory can take care of understanding the universe. That's what because today's century is the best century of all centuries. So it discarded the past. We are only our historical presence is now. Don't think about the past. So we talk about Newtonian physics, Freudian iteration reduction, equilibrium model. Everybody that everything is rational can be calculated, and therefore there's order in the universe. All right, next. Enjoy me for my sake. Don't refer me to history. Don't refer me to mythologies. My work is, we are talking about time for mimetic handling. In other words, the manipulation of media, technique, and forms. That's adequate enough for visual appreciation of work of art. Works to produce from this theoretical model are said to be pure forms and nothing more. So you see a work of art, you are looking for a man on a bicycle, you will not see it. You are going to see images that are flat. But it's their own way, beginning to tell you something. In fact, the famous art historian, Mayer Shapiro, he said modern art is very abstract. It don't tell us anything. But the colors raise vibes in our emotions. We begin to hear the music of visual imagery without knowing what it's telling us. That without music, we can't live. Music is not a condition for surviving. Works are produced like orchestral music through their visual phrasing. Next. We celebrate such work because of their aesthetic power shown in their visual models of abstraction in order to create autonomous and self-sufficient forms in space, as if these are a form of visual grammar. So I'm speaking grammar in a painting. See, I put things together. It's architectonic. With these syntactics, it is the success of their formal properties, how images and works, techniques are put together that drives the beauty of the work. They extol the theory of formalism, art for art's sake, art for art. Good example, abstract paintings of Dutch painter, Pierre Mondrian. In modern art, there's a total break with the past. So if you are collecting, total break with the past. You can't bring a Michelangelo and say I'm collecting now. It's in the museum, the art galleries. They are masters on their own. But even within contemporary time, historical time, you find you are under a new sequence of patronage and handling of forms. In modern art, there's a total break with the past. The art of the last 100 years was involved in telling of stories about public institutions associated with the peoples, the emperors, wedding families, and the like. Next. Now we enter modernism. How do I introduce modernism? I want to introduce modernism that they are described as cuboid plan. Geometry rules the world. The universe of planes. With new material produced in factories, they have tensile strength. You don't have to decorate them anymore. They say in architecture, less is more. Form follows function. So we find this man who is Le Corbusier was a pioneer of modern architecture. So he made a house with a machine to live in. So that's the machine. The proportion was clear based on mathematical calculations. So was a problem. So the building consists of series of planes, as you can see there. They're just bare planes that seem to form a large rectangular box. As if geometric planes are the building blocks of the universe. And as if reality is being reduced, abbreviated to each basic geometric elements. That's what modernism is emphasizing. Simplicity, abstraction of shapes. So we return to the irreducible minimum of those constituents that unify the universe. The above building is a product of industrialization and production of sensitized material for building construction, etc. Next. Now let's see how this is affecting painting. Please, the understanding of art modernism has become an incident canon in 20th century art. What do you mean by canon? This is the only way to follow. This is the rule. This is the law. You can't break it. The work consists of surface planes of color, consisting of yellows, reds, black, blue, and white. In this way, there are sharp contrasts of colors, as you can see, yellow versus red and blue. They are almost conflicting colors. But in them, there's a unity because of the dark lines which unify them. And they neutralize their brilliance by white areas. There is equilibrium. So he says the arrangement of planes is asymmetric. Here, the explosion of composition elements is symmetric, almost architectonic. This manner of composition and phrasing is described by the painter Mondrian as the dynamic equilibrium. A close look at it will show that it is not narrative, but abstract expression, because it does not tell, but merely contain what is often described as important form, scalar form. All the basic forms are reduced to the minimum, and that minimum is not satisfy an collector. Next. Now we go to Nigeria and find an artist working within the terms and iconic provisions of modernism. It's a painting by a painter I'm going to mention. This is a painting by Obi Erudite, who is a prominent member of the Nsukka school, famous for his reinvention of the idiom, which is a patterns painted by women on their body. And the school wanted to, including me at the early 70s, we started looking at them and found that we can borrow as a resource and reinvent it as a component instrument for establishing our own art modernity. So we found then that here, Obi belongs to that school for a modern artistic statement. This is because of the rhythms and cursive lines which have turned the art of body painting into a resource for creative inventiveness. If you look at these cursive lines, rhythmic forms, are borrowed from body painting, Igbo body painting. But here they have been modernized. So in this picture, we see a horizontally formatted painting consisting of rectangular bands of colors. You can see serrates, particle bones, and other dark colors. It is simply a play with colors, as if the artist was aspiring towards visual poetry. So the minimum, so it's no longer telling you stories. The elaboration is only abstract phrasing of experience into imagery. It's to simulate the color of metal pipes. The figure is a visual idiom as well as a metaphor of the ravages of people's culture and economic well-being. The title is scholar. So when I look at it, I say, I don't say it's scholar. But I find that at the end of the depredations, they are not being sent to school. The scholar is a retentive imagery, showing us that ultimately the people led to intellectual liberation, isn't it? All right, next. Okay, here's a painting again of formalist trade. If you saw that, we say, what am I looking at? You say, look at me for what I am. I am pure form. Colors are pure. Textures are there. Spaces are well aligned. It's an autonomous form in space. Enjoy yourself. As with the modern imagery art making, this work consists of geometric organic abbreviations of forms and saturated with luminous colors in their visual contrast and tension. The work explores different techniques. You can see some are woven, some are pasted, all kinds of things, combination of different techniques. But we call it collaged techniques. The use of paste-ups and other allied techniques. It is intended simply as a visual narrative, although it may be implied if it is beauty or subject and chromatic, which is good to engage in appreciating this work. Next. Now, here's another painter who is a ceramist from Nsukka, who has moved the world. He does simple things that are very potent. A creator of artwork is here confronted with stark visual rhetoric of an experimental ceramist who knows that ceramics is not merely concerned with production of utility items such as cups, plates, flower vases. He teaches the art collector that ceramics is a tool for social commentaries on the human condition as they recede towards the invisible margins of the grave. He believes that the role of the artist is not only to tell us what we like to hear, but to expose the fragility of the human condition. Its dire consequences are the casualties of our nation, as well as casualties of human condition. I tell myself, what the artist is saying, we are all casualties. We are political casualties, economic casualties. Even leadership can be a casualty. We are casualties of the mind, casualties of our presidency. So we find that casualty is Nigeria, and elsewhere in the world. It's a universal message taken by an artist who's a ceramist. Using models like that of small silhouettes, fragments of clays, burnt and fired. What happens? When you look at it, it tells you it's very potent, laden with images that we are all casualties in this world. And look at yourself, look at your condition, whether you're a casualty or not. Yes. He believes that. So he uses clay slabs, shaped like figurines, compacted in cases to show social commentary. The artist is a social critic. When Achebe won a prize, national prize of 1 million naira, the press asked him, you must like Obasanjo, who now gave you a national award. He said, no, we writers do not praise governments. We tell them what they are doing wrong. So that is a commentator. They call it an acknowledged legislator of mankind. That's why he was at periphery and now moved the center for quick to address society. This is a social address to the community in Nigeria. I remind you of their social condition. Next. We want a period known as art modernism. So when you are collecting, you know whether you are collecting postmodernist works or modernist works, there's a difference, and I'm trying to demonstrate. It's another paradigm shift in creative innovation. Postmodernism is said not to be a movement, but a shift in human condition, and characterized by internet connectivity. If you are here, you heard somebody in Rome, you know what's happening in Italy. So those things now begin to reshape your identity. If you look at yourself, you have found that you are not even, you are Nigerian only in the sense that you're Nigerian. You look at your dress, you find that they come from different parts of the world. You're a collage. Postmodernism is said to be a movement, but a shift in human condition, and characterized by internet connectivity, social fragmentation, disequilibrium. Newton showed that physics, when you throw it, it comes down in an atomic phenomenon. Einstein came, it's no longer true. The world is no longer certain, but now probable only. Truth is no longer certain, but only probable. So you have quantum mechanics of electromagnetism, in which sparks of electricity disengage themselves and almost underrate, violate the phenomena. That's how they say in physics. Chance is a positive element in modern physics, they say it. That's what they're referring to. So postmodernism is said to be a movement, but a shift in human condition, characterized by internet connectivity, social fragmentation, disequilibrium. Things are no longer the same. Shifting across the boundary, people are traveling all over. Refugee movement. As you move, you take your culture and mix with other cultures. You see that's what is happening. So at local, national, transnational, and global boundaries, the subject now, the center, you are no longer in control of yourself. Things are around. That's why you find in fashion. A boy now, we need to have symmetry in hairstyle. You call very clean lines. When I see them wearing things I do like this on the head. So unity has given birth to what? Disunity, which is also what? Unity. But when I was at school, they used to say, understanding is different from misunderstanding. They were enemies. My new study showed that they're not enemies. If I understand you, later on I can misunderstand you. If I misunderstand at one time, I will also understand you. So they're complementary. Understanding is part of understanding. You can't talk about good health without mentioning disease, isn't it? So this is kind of transgression happening in postmodern condition. Artists are reaping that and harvesting that into their work. So we find then that they accept that in place of order in this world, there's anarchy and fragmentation, and a consideration towards cultural pluralism. When I talk about sexuality, gender, race, all these are now variables that influence artists. You are no longer campaign. So painting is not the center. It's no longer at the center. There's no center in the world. That's what is happening. There are shifting centers. Where you are becomes your center. But that center can shift. Because bombardment of media, you have been told things you want to hear, incorporate into your memory and become part of your historical identity. Next. So like modernism, they extol aesthetically open synthetic forms. All objects, things you don't know, they're brought together. Multiple techniques. You no longer are using a fabric. I can use clay. I can use any type of material. And media employed in both painting, sculpture, ceramic, and painting installations with their multiple and simultaneous. We're going to find when I show you, you're going to find paintings that don't tell you, this is this. It tells you there are possibilities for this. Yes, that's what we're going to find. All right. He believes that works of art have a broad meaning with an endless chain of significance. In other words, when you raise one meaning, first one said, every conclusion is the beginning of another argument. That's postmodernism. You need to think we are concluded. As you are concluded, somebody use your own and begin a new enterprise. So there's no conclusion. In my right, I say, for every conclusion, there's a beginning again. And that beginning is a departure. At the same time, it's also other people arriving, others are departing, isn't it? So there's no center. So in other words, in production, any movement is possible. It's multidirectional, not unitary. It's about the theory of appropriation and representation, so that creation of artwork can serve as means of exploration. In other words, people are exploring things, whatever. Used to say, use color. It's no longer that. You use color, you can use fabrics, you can use cement. Anything you can do, even waste can turn to aesthetic wealth. That's part of modernist attitude in production. Next. In the construct of every known rules of art, from art classicism to art modernism, is skeptical about identity. What is your identity? Are you sure you have an identity? Because you are candidating from New York, Switzerland. Your shoes are from Italy. So you are a split identity. You are no longer an autonomous subject. So the artist owner trying to record and visualize this break of identity with fragmentation. So we say that art modernism we should turn to a consideration of visual images as visual metaphors of the human condition. Art addresses the human condition. Next. In works we are about to discover, we provide good example of postmodern works of art. They illustrate through the creative vision of an artist like El Anasui And in a world of uncertainty and fragmentation, the role of art is to explore the world with highly transgressive media. Don't use one media, use many. Every media is right. You can appropriate it and use it. So you have synthetic media and techniques. So I'm going to show you an example where an artist is going to use techniques from ceramics and textile and he build it together. Before it was impossible. They say it doesn't know what is here. Now synthesis has become very important. Collaging has been very important. All right, next. Now next. Let me not waste time here. Next. Okay, let's see a work that demonstrates this postmodernist work. It's a work by El Anasui. If you look at that work, you think it's a mat, but it's not a mat. If you look at it, it is folded as if it's from a tailor shop. It is not. If you look at it again, you find colors. Colors are autonomous. Some area, see on the right here, you find textures that are different from textures on the left. What he's saying is that all these are valid and working simultaneously, appropriating different materials because I'm synthesizing them so they become one. But there's no unity. Because this is like orchestral music, where somebody's playing high, somebody's playing low. You look at the tones, vast tonality, different in the attention. Some are deep, others are there. If you look at the area, very light, area very heavy here. So that's the attempt to create a universe of ideas. So installation is to install objects that generate ideas. No longer it is about a man riding a bicycle. It is no longer narrative. We install them so that the object becomes meaning, but it's if you like, embodied meaning. So here's a single story, loosely structured. There's no center. I want to have red, independent yellows, all vying for competition, yet they belong to a work of art. So this kind of chromatic synthesis is very important. It works as well with part modernism. Next. We find what it does, meticulous handling of form. See what it does. It breaks down beer bubble tops and breaks down, crushes them, and using copper wire to shrink them. Because they are color, tones, everything is done very clearly. You can see that too. Technical handle of that area. Is that kind of approach that you find that work on the left. Next. There's a painting, a sculpture installation by Mosibo, reminding us that we live in a fragmented world and our chaos rule the world. Here you have look at the floor there, you find what looks like bottles, probably made of a city of luxury. Around them, you have a Jegunle around them. You can see them, fragments. The world is in fragments. What do they produce? All these suicide bombers, these people who are committed suicide, hanging over us, are a word of oppositeness and contradiction. That's what the artist is telling us. And when we recognize that contradiction, it is plowed into works of art. Next. And next, because of time. And next. Now, who is an artist? A ceramic artist. He says, all fabrics are printed on flat surfaces. He says, no, I have to deploy other aspects to mobilize and energize my work. So he takes ceramic pots and wraps them with fabrics. You look at them and say, what are you going to say? What meaning? Jubilation? Feast? Or they can count up on which you have wealth, and those bad words are poverty. You can read them in any way. That means open reading of works of art is very typical of postmodernist works because they are multi-directional in their narratives. Next. Finally, reach the master of them all. For over 45 years of creative enterprise, Bruce Nobel had trained the world of art, and I collected with the resonance and professional status of the works. I received a gold medal from Papacy, an honorary doctorate degree, honorary causa from the University of Ibadan. I received a number of fellowships and invited for art presidencies. He's a modern master who passed off his pronounced of modern Nigerian art. As an eminent printmaker and cultural activist, Bruce Nobel has over the years explored quite generously a medley of printmaking techniques from lino cut, plastograph, engraving, deep etching, color etching, additive photograph, plastoclast, bronze relief, and rest of that. Next. He has shifted to, no. So we finally repeat. So here's a work, assemblage of things. It's no longer sculpting or painting or printing. He brings words so that each form can generate. You look at it looks like a temple, mixing all of that. So that gives us an environment or works in which you can generate meanings, that it can be ancestral altar. It can be an altar of inner consciousness. Can be altar of Nigeria. Can be an altar in which sacred things are a mix of secular things, enveloping an imagery that tells all of us in the environment of meanings. Next, finally. I want to finally round up with what I call discursive finding. What did I find out from this narrative? And the discussions have shown clearly that the collection of artworks is a long creative journey through history. Through its upward mobility within historical periods, works of art were created that reflected the spirit of an age. We saw clearly that historical conditions shaped the thinking of each age, underlying issues pertaining to art, patronage, production strategies, functions, meanings, and even other matters relating to beauty or aesthetics. Art historical journey was divided into three important periods: the age of classicism, the modern age, and postmodern age. Next. For over 100 years, Western art, particularly of which we are beneficiaries in terms of art pedagogy, stressed the importance of one artistic canon. This is that the world could be represented as naturalistic and with self-sufficient internal order, unity, and with Newtonian balance in a three-dimensional world. From there, we enter the modern age with emphasis on creative individualism, branch experimental materials, govern the law of geometric thinking. Next. And then from there, we enter into the postmodern era of internet connectivity, of shifting boundaries, a world of fragmentation and indeterminacy, a world of fragmentation, a collage world in which the artist could draw his material from every historical source, was free and still free to sell works with conventional or conventional materials. I think the world is no longer the same. For above experiences, immense challenges await any art collector who wishes to collect works of art. This is an exciting enterprise that requires that the collector be an acolyte as an initiate into the world of art scholarship. Next. To collect, they begin to seek new knowledge in vast portals of art knowledge. For the age of civilization of art collecting under the protection of popes, emperors, wealthy families, empire builders, other categories of conquerors, of kings and queens, princes. To ignore these portals of knowledge is to deny oneself receptive intellect needed in collecting artworks. It goes to show that knowledge of art and artistry provides a primary equipment, a very enticing way of collecting works of art. Next. To collect artworks, a collector should be well acquainted with professional artists and their works through the collection of art catalogs or by surfing through the internet so as to get some background knowledge of artists and the evolving art practices in the creative industry, as well as the history of professional practice. Now, art collector should also be constant a visitor to art exhibitions from which he begins to cultivate familiarity with what works, their types, their media, production techniques, their forms, etc. Next. Many collectors cultivate a healthy relationship with artists and become frequent visitors to the art studios, even watch the process of creative production. To be part of this creative process that brings a work of art into artistic being is a way of entry into the culture of art collection. Recently, the wife of former American President, Mr. Obama, visited the upcoming Nigeria's award winner, painter Educator, her studio. Such visits are useful for art collector. To witness the creation of what art, an art piece is to understand its production techniques. One begins to understand the relationship between the creative process and the visual product. An art collector may also find it happy to develop a creative partnership with the professional artists and watch in their studio the process of art making. Next. Another informed approach of collecting artworks is to seek the assistance of art specialists, such as art consultants, art curators, art critics, and historians. They can provide an intellectual guide to the aesthetic evaluation of works of art. This presentation has already provided clues to the values of art scholarship over matters related to collection of works of art. Another way is to partner with art galleries and museums, sponsoring art exhibitions as an investment in self-knowledge. One could even seek sponsorship from public agencies in order to be able to sponsor art exhibitions. Next. And the one purpose for collection of works of art is that works of art fit into the economic value chain of every country. This is because works of art have become important economic commodities, which are important vehicles of economic exchange. To invest in art is very much like investing in stock exchange or to buy shares in manufacturing industries. While the other investments are subject to all manner of taxation, works of art remain private and silent investments to their owners. More importantly, they appreciate with time the economic values. This is the terrain of art galleries and museums. Next. A collector should also know that higher values of art are derived from a long history. Every work has a history. The longer the history, the greater is the range of economic value within the economic value chain. This is why works dating to a high 100 years have very high purchase value. What we have done in this presentation is to demonstrate that an art collector should be well acquainted with works of art in terms of their historical origin, development. We showed that three phases of this historical development. Next. The first one has to do with age of classicism, when works were realistically produced, and you can see the narrative, what it tells us. Second way, they call art modernism, because it follows and reflects a study of cuboid plan, where purity of form is stressed. The third period described art modernism is a period when cultural frontiers and media are open. and move in that creative direction. Next. These are my submissions, and I rest my case. Thank you for the opportunity, and being an intelligent listener. Thank you.